Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Best of British Blackwell. Today we're going to be making a barbecue classic, absolute classic. We're going to be making barbecue pulled pork. I'm going to be making it on the Kamado Joe, but I'm also going to give you some tips and advice for how to make this if you don't have a Kamado or if you have a different type of barbecue. And also we're going to be doing a little bit of a test today. So quite recently I received this new Inkbird thermometer, digital thermometer with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It's the IBT-26S, and I think cooking this piece of pulled pork, which is going to take a very, very long time, is going to be an adequate test for this. So we're going to also have a look and see how this performs as well. Come over and have a look at the meat that we're working with. I've got the barbecue set up, ready to go, and we'll make a start. So here we go. This is the meat that we're working with today. This is a whole shoulder of pork. There's only one single bone in it. It's been boned out, and it's also had the skin removed from the top because that doesn't work well with pulled pork. You'll get a better view of this once it goes on the barbecue, and the reason I've got it in this Tupperware is last night I added a nice kind of layer of French mustard, and then I also rubbed it down using some wonderful sweet bones and bacon rub from Angus and Oink. The process of cooking this is going to be quite long, so it's quite an early start today to serve this up for dinner later. There's some temperature markers that we're going to need to get this to, but I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail when we start to talk about the Inkbird as well. But it's now very much time to get this onto the barbecue and start the cooking process. So let's have a look at this Inkbird. This is the latest Bluetooth Wi-Fi smart barbecue thermometer from Inkbird. It's the updated IBT-26S. I'd like to thank the guys at Inkbird for sending this to me for a review. I have used it once already, so this isn't a genuine first time unboxing. I have tried it out. As you can see, it's slightly different in look to other thermometers, and they've tried to go for the very stylish kind of black and rose gold there. I know a few people are not too keen on the rose gold. I actually quite like it, to be honest with you. What else have we got in here? What I was surprised with this was the amount of probes that you get. There's a lot of wireless thermometers out there that only send you one or two probes, and you have to buy the others as additional extras. Well, Inkbird have, you know, just gone straight out there and provided you with 4 probes. As you can see, mine are in a little bit of a mess already because I've used them once. But yeah, total of 4 probes. And the other thing I like about their probes as well is the color coordination. So, you know, you've got the red or orange, if you like, lead plug, and then down at the probe end you've got the orange again, so you know exactly what you're plugging into what part of the barbecue. The other things that you get in the box as well are a couple of the clips, the grill clips, and you also get the charging cable as well, which is very handy. In terms of connectivity, it's really, really easy. On your phone, you literally go onto your Bluetooth settings and you'll find the Inkbird on there, and you can connect straight away. And then in terms of connecting via Wi-Fi, what you need to do is download the app, the Inkbird app, and just register an account on there. Free, very simple and easy to do. Once you've registered on that app, as you can see, hopefully here, you'll see that my IBT-26S is on there. And once I turn the device on here, it will activate the device on here. It's saying offline at the moment, but it will connect, and then you'll have full connectivity on the phone, which I'll show you again once we get the cook up and running. So here we go. We've got the meat on the Kamado Joe. This is how I'm cooking it today on the Kamado, just so I can control the temperature really nicely. I've set the heat down there. I've got some oak chips in there as well, or some oak blocks I should say, not chips. I've got the slow roller on. I've got a drip tray underneath. And in terms of the setup for the cook and the thermometer, I've got one of the probes on the grills just to give me an accurate reading of where the heat is coming through. And the second probe is going to go into the meat, and all I need to do here is just try and avoid the bone. So there we go, that's gone right through. And pretty much immediately, I'm not sure you're going to be able to see on the camera, but hopefully you can, it's already pre-detected that we've got pork on there. We've got a temperature reading of 57 for the ambient temperature and 6 degrees for the in the meat temperature. But also that will replicate on my phone, which I'll show you next. Here we go. So again, hopefully we can see that. I've got the 2 readings on there. This is just directly via the Inkbird app. You can see that we've got 59 degrees centigrade for the grill and 6.5 degrees for the meat. So another clever little thing that you can do with this app, and again hopefully you can see this, is you can set a maximum temperature. So you go to the temperature probe icon and you change that to 70 degrees and set that up, and what that will basically do is alarm when this piece of meat hits 70 degrees. Now obviously different parts of the meat will hit a different temperature at different times, so this is where you might want to consider using the other 3 probes, or the other 2 probes that we've got, and putting them in different parts of the meat. But I'm not going to bother with that this time, because I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on this, and what we're trying to do is, for the first part of this cook, get that meat to 70 degrees. I will be opening and having a look, but I want to develop a little bit of a bark, so I'll predominantly keep the lid closed, try and get this grill up to about 125 degrees centigrade, and then look for that meat to hit 70 degrees. That's when we're going to be looking to pull this off, wrap it up, and then really hammer on and get it to that pulled pork stage. So I thought we'd do a little progress update. We're about an hour into the cook. As you can see, the grill's holding a really nice temperature. It's telling us that the meat is 31 degrees and that the grill is 130. But as you can see, we've got a lovely bit of British weather. Clouds all over and storms all over the place. So just as a little bit of protection for the Inkbird, I just put a little Tupperware container over the top. Let's have a look at the meat. That's lovely. And now at this stage I think people would probably start spritzing, but I'm not going to do that. I'm very happy with how that's progressing. I'm just going to close that lid down and let that crack on. Okay, so we're about 4.5, 5 hours into this cook, and it's time to have a look and see what our meat's doing. And that's just the sight to behold. That's exactly what I'm looking for. We've got a lovely bark on there. You don't have to worry too much about the fact that you've got some areas here where there's not bark. We're cooking this fat side up, so the fat's just starting to melt out and you're not going to get as much buck there as you would usually. The Inkbird's going really well. 5 hours in and we're 84% on the battery, so that's really good. That shows that it's got a very long battery life. What I'm going to do now is start probing, because it's showing me that we're on 66, which is very, very close to the temperature that we want to start wrapping. And then I expect all of the outside areas here to be well over the 70 now, and that's showing 76, 73, 76, 80, around there. So actually, I think we're very, very close to actually taking this off and wrapping this now. So as you can see, we've wrapped this pork shoulder up real nice now. This is nice and tight. 3 or 4 layers of foil on here. If this was beef and really kind of seeping lots of juices, I'd be using the butcher's paper, but pork doesn't. It tends to kind of tighten up a little bit and you don't get as much runoff from the meat. What I am going to do now is use all 3 probes. So I'm going to go back into the center of the meat with the probe that I was using earlier, and then I'm using the 2 additional probes that come with this Inkbird to get me around the sides. If I can untangle the cables. One in the side of the meat here, and this is a new one, sorry, they come with a little safety cap on there, so you've got to take those off. And just want to avoid the bone here. There we go. So now I've got pretty much 3 areas of this pork shoulder covered. What we're going to do is get this up to 90 degrees internal now. I'm not messing with the temperature of the Kamado. I've not touched the vents. I've not touched the top vent or the bottom vent. We're just going to be closing this down, letting it reach back up to temperature, and this is one of those cooks where you take your time with it and let it run. Pulled pork is very forgiving, so if you get little heat spikes, it doesn't really matter. But this is really good. I'd say we've probably got another 2 or 3 hours left on this. Okay, so we have had another little rain shower, as you can probably see by the fact that I've got my Tupperware tub over this. Our 3 different probes are showing 3 different temperatures, but 2 of them are showing that we've hit 90 degrees, which I believe is this one here and this one here. So for me, that's a perfect time to now pull this from the grill and get it resting. So that is precisely what we're going to do. Okay, so I have had this resting here for about an hour and a half. Now, I know that there's loads and loads of people that will turn around and say, well, that's too long for pulled pork, or, you know, I need less time, or maybe even need more. But there is sound reasoning behind the way I do this. And the first thing is, I always rest it in something like some Tupperware, because I've lost count of the amount of times I've seen videos of people putting pulled pork, resting it in something like this, and then chopping it up on a board, and then you see all of those juices falling out of that meat. That juice that comes out of this meat needs to be reincorporated back into this meat. So hopefully you can see at the bottom here, look at all that juice. By resting it for a good amount of time in something like this, we're going to guarantee that we don't lose that juice. So the first thing we need to do is just remove this lid. The second reason I keep it in something like this is that this is going to help me bring this down to room temperature as well, or just cooler than room temperature when we want to refrigerate it. So the moment it comes off of the barbecue, doesn't have to leave this at all. It doesn't have to leave this Tupperware. We can do everything that we need to do now within this. This can get a little bit messy, but all I do here is I try to rip this foil open around 3 sides so that I've got access straight into the meat. Now, hopefully you can see that this is still steaming hot. So it's not gone cold, nothing like that. And it's a lovely, lovely temperature to work with. Let me just get rid of the worst of that. This part here is where it can get a little bit messy, but let me just give that a dab. Look at that. That's the fat cap on this pork shoulder, which is in it's just come out great, to be honest with you. This is where it can get a little bit messy and a little bit splattery. But again, one of the reasons for keeping it in some Tupperware like this is so that we don't have too much of an issue getting it out. What I want to do is kind of slide it off of the foil. Just take your time with this part. You don't need to rush this. You've spent so long creating this wonderful piece of meat. Just take your time with it. And look, just allow those juices to roll off of that foil. Everything about this is just beautiful. This is just still a little bit too hot for me to get hands in there actually. It is, you know, really, really warm. But what I have spotted here is a bone. And what I'm going to do is get my bear claws here. These are all available on Amazon, cheap enough. And look at this, you know, just start to pull at that meat and carve it away. And as we dig down, what we're going to get to is this shoulder bone. You just see, I'm just using a bit of a tearing technique here. And I'm just pulling away at this bone. And then once we get down to the bottom here, what I'm hoping to be able to do is just place these to one side, get this bone out by hand. It's not quite there yet, but there we go, it's coming. And that is the only bone that we've actually got in this whole piece of meat. And that's come off really quite nicely, hasn't it? There we go, there's the shoulder bone out. Okay, so we've used the bear claws to pull as much of the meat apart as possible. This is where the patience needs to come in, because the bear claws will only do so much. What you need to do now is get a nice sturdy set of forks and start working on the individual chunks of meat that we've got. So here, for example, a nice big chunk of meat here. Just literally start to shred it apart piece by piece. This could quite easily take you, this part here could easily take you an hour or two if you want to do it really fine. I tend to like to leave some relatively big chunks in there, so I'm not going to be too methodical about this. But what I don't want are huge big chunks. I like relatively big chunks, but something like that, you know, that's too much. So get a fork in there and just tear that meat apart from it. And hopefully what you can see by now is that although we've still got that moisture in here, it's not sitting in a pool at the bottom of this kind of plastic tub. It's starting to re-infuse into the meat. Got some nice big bits down here which we're going to bring up to the top, and that's what you have to do. You have to dig down and find these huge pieces of meat like this, and then individually pull them apart. So I'm going to crack on with this. Once I've got it to the consistency that I want, I'm going to start to show you some things to turn your pulled pork from decent into absolutely magical. So this is the consistency that I want to get this pulled pork at, and as you can see, we've still got some moisture at the bottom there, but it's basically all absorbed into this meat. And you'll also see we've got a really good meat to fat content here, you know, so there are some quite big pieces of fat still left in here, but don't worry, we're going to knock those down really quickly. But we're going to make some additions in here. Now, my first addition in here is very simple and something that a lot of people do, but it's some barbecue sauce. Now, I've got the cheapest barbecue sauce you can find. This is just from my local supermarket. I find that using an expensive barbecue sauce in here is kind of lost really, because what you're not trying to do is add so much barbecue sauce in here that you get the taste of the barbecue sauce over the pork. What you're trying to do is just make sure that this pork remains as moist as you can keep it. So adding something with a sweet texture and taste to it, like a barbecue sauce, works really well with the pork. The other thing which I like to add, and people think I'm mad for doing so, is some chopped up peppers. So these are like bell peppers for our American cousins. There's a yellow one in there, a whole yellow one, and there's a whole red one in there. And all I've done is finely chopped that, and I've just sauteed it or fried it off very quickly. This again, I think, adds massively to the sweetness going in here, but it's not just an out and out sweetness of a sauce or a sugar or anything like that. It's peppery, and it also gives you a lovely bit of colour. Now, because we're adding so much sweetness in there in terms of the peppers and the actual meat itself, the pork, which is quite, you know, sweet and holds that kind of sweet tones, and the barbecue sauce, pickles, chopped up dill sandwich pickles, and I add about 3/4 of a jar of these. And to be honest with you, when I've made this for friends and family, this is the ingredient that they've just not been able to pick out. I've normally chop it up a little bit finer than that, but for the purposes of this video I've left it quite thick. And again, it's all about textures and tastes. So what does this add? What does the pickle add? It adds that vinegary texture, it adds that tang to it, it takes it from sweet through to acidic or vinegary, and that is a flavour contrast that works so well in this dish. So what I do now is I just get one fork in here, and I'm slowly but surely just churning this over, turning it up, and just look at the moisture in there. The other fantastic thing about this dish is that pulled pork freezes unbelievably well. Look at the sheer amount of meat that we've got in this pot here. So I've got a family barbecue tomorrow with some friends coming over, and we probably won't eat all of this, but whatever is left over can be frozen and vacuum packed. So just goes in the fridge or the freezer and can be reheated in a couple of days' time, as long as you bring it up past that 74 degrees centigrade mark. And it's just a wonderful thing to be serving up. Tomorrow it means that I just need to reheat this, and I'll probably do that in my cast iron on the barbecue, just because it will do it really quickly, and we're just serving up pulled pork buns and burgers for the kids, and it's just a wonderful dish. I'd like to say a big thank you to my local butcher, Blade and Bone, who served up this wonderful piece of meat for me. We're kind of nearly there with it. Okay, so during this cook, we used the brand new Inkbird Bluetooth Wi-Fi smart barbecue thermometer, the IBT-26S. I'm not going to lie to you, Inkbird sent this to me. This was free, I didn't pay for it. They asked me to do a review of it. but true to my word, I do a review which shows you the good and the bad. It's a wonderful piece of kit. It really is. It's very good looking. It's accurate. You know, let's talk about all of the positives about it. You know, it's a lovely piece of kit. Connects to your phone really nicely. The app works really, really well. The app is really nice and easy to use. It's very, very accurate. I tested out some of the sensors in some boiling water just to check the accuracy against the Thermapen and something like the Meter Plus, and actually, you know, they're all on a par. They do get the temperature accuracy spot on. I love the fact that it comes with 4 temperature probes instead of just 1 or 2, and then you've got to buy the extras. But the thing that's always going to mark these down against everything else, well, not everything else, but most other leading brands out there, and actually what I'm talking about here is the meters, the meter wireless probes, is the wire. So everything about this product is absolutely superb, apart from the fact that you've got these wired probes that tangle because they're metal, and they get a bit distorted because they're metal. The meter probes are always more convenient because they've got no cables. However, in this price range, you cannot beat this, because a Meter Plus probe is going to cost you £119 on Amazon. Okay, the Meter Block, which comes with 4 probes, which this comes with, is going to cost you £319. From next week, so from the 10th of July onwards, this is going to be £48 on Amazon. Now, if you can show me an accurate, easy to use barbecue thermometer probe that's just as well designed as this for £48, well, you know, you've done well. £48 for this is superb. So like I said, from the 10th of July, this is going to be available on a 40% discount, reduced from $79.99 to £48 on Amazon. Honestly, you won't go wrong. If you can afford to go out there and buy a Meter Plus or a Meter Block, then do so. But actually, there's a lot of people out there like myself that can't afford to go to that level. So actually, this is going to be really, really good. So guys, this is one of these videos where I have to send you some apologies, because what I usually do at the end of my videos is do a little bit of a tasting and talk about the food that I've cooked and how I've cooked it. I've got to be honest with you, I just ran out of time this weekend, and the food that we ate this weekend was for a family and friends party that we had, where we had some friends over to eat some of that pulled pork. But let me tell you, it was absolutely superb. And the friends and the family that we had round to eat it, they all agreed. So, you know, if you're looking to make a dish on your barbecue or even in your oven, because you can make that pulled pork in the oven, just get it in there at 120 and leave it in there for 9 or 10 hours. If you're looking for a recipe that goes a very long way in terms of the amount of food that you're going to get out of it and the amount of different kind of servings that you're going to get out, or if you're looking for something that's just a real crowd pleaser, get that pulled pork out there. Go to your local butcher, buy a shoulder of pork, get all of those little extras like the dill pickles and the peppers and the barbecue sauce, and just make something where you can just load it into a jacket potato or into a burger or into a toasted sandwich or just on its own. That's how we had it. Have a look at some of the photos of the food that we made this weekend, and it's just so simple, and I'm just glad I've been able to bring you this recipe. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.